All right, so collisions in 2D aren't any different than collisions in 3D, except obviously one is in 2 dimensions and one is in 3. Remember, you can't mix the two. So if you're tempted to do that, it won't work. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. So we've got our frog here. Let's go ahead and add a collider to him. And we want one of the 2D ones. So you can use a box collider 2D, or maybe a circle collider 2D. He's kind of circular, so let's try a circle collider. That actually looks really great. That'll give us a little bit more leeway, right? So that's pretty much perfect. And so he's got his collider on him. We don't need anything else. We might do the is trigger thing. Yes, we will. We'll do is trigger because when a car runs over him, we don't want to actually have him be pushed around. We want him to basically get squished. And so there's our is trigger, and we have our froggy controller there. So what we can do is we can go into our froggy controller, which I should still have open, and we can make an adjustment to this. So we can add on, and we have to spell it correctly, on trigger enter. And it usually takes a collider, but this is 2D, so it's going to be a 2D collider. And I'll usually just call this other, whatever you hit, right? So on trigger enter other. Oh, I forgot to put void in front of it. There we go. All right. Now, what's next? We need to check to make sure that whatever hit us was a car or some other bad thing. So why don't we just sort of generically call it enemy? So I will check to see if there's a tag on whatever hit us called enemy. So I'll say if other.tag equals enemy. And if it was, then we need to go ahead and update the state of the frog to being dead. And we probably want to make sure that you can't jump. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but we'll go ahead and set the state since that's pretty easy. It's frog state, set bool, and I think we called it is dead. We can just check it real quick, and we're going to set it to true. Okay, so that should make it work okay. Let's just make sure that's what I called it. Let me go into animator. Do I still have it? Yeah, I still have it up. There it is. Okay, and I called it is dead. So that's right. So is dead was my parameter. I set it is dead. Now I just need to make sure that you can't jump or move when you're dead. And so the easy way to do that is just to go up to the top and let's add a private Boolean. And we'll set it equal to false initially. And then down here, where we just were, we'll go ahead and set this to true. So we'll say is dead equals true. And now we just need to change our jumping code so that it's not even considered if he's dead. So we'll say, I'll just add a second if statement above it. I'll say if not is dead. And notice I didn't put any spaces in there. Well, I think you can. I don't think it cares. If not is dead, then we're going to go ahead and do our logic. And that just means pretty much all of it, all the way down to the lerp, should be within that if statement. And in Visual Studio, it will reformat your code. Maybe it will, maybe it won't in MonoDevelop. Okay, so that will prevent us from doing anything if we're dead. So now all we really need to do to make this work is switch back over to Unity. Let's go back into our scene. Actually, let's go down into our 80s SUV, and we want the prefab, not the sprite. So we'll say 80s SUV, and we need to tag this as an enemy. We don't have an enemy tag, so let's add it. There's our enemy tag. Go back to our 80s SUV prefab, and let's tag it as an enemy. Perfect. Okay. So now we've got this thing so that it should croak, literally, if he runs into a car. So let's test it. Oh, I jumped right through it. And you would think that that would be doing him in. So I clearly didn't do something. So let's see what that is. We've got is trigger. More than likely, my mistake when I do this is that I've gotten the spelling on this incorrect. And so let's just try this before I go look it up. I really wanted to see, I really want you guys to see this because this is a common mistake. I could kind of come up here and peek and see, and they all start theirs with uppercase letters, but maybe I got it. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I do have this wrong. I forgot to put 2D on the end of it. But you can troubleshoot this by just doing debug.log, and you can just say something like it fired, and now you'll get a message if it fires, which of course it won't. Okay, so he should be pretty well squished right there, but we don't see anything coming up. We see our starting message, but we don't see anything else. And we've actually got an error in here. On trigger enter, it wants it to be a collider and not a collider 2D, which is what we're passing it. So there is a problem. So let's go back and correct this. It's on trigger enter to, I think it's 2D. And it actually won't help us. So on trigger enter 2D. Let's go look it up. We can try that. That should probably work, but let's go look it up. Unity on trigger enter 2D. Okay, and you have to get this spelled correctly. Sometimes I forget and put a lowercase o in there, and that won't work. So if you made that lowercase o and then uppercase te, but this is what we forgot to do. And then the other thing that I could never remember is an uppercase d or a lowercase d. Then that's apparently what it is. So that should fix it. Let's see if that corrects our situation. Goodbye, cruel world. Still no luck. Let's go back to scene and let's click. Oh, we don't have a collider on this thing, do we? We need to add a collider to our SUV. That's what we forgot. So many details. All right, so we've got 80s SUV. It has no collider on it. So let's add a box collider 2D to that one. And that should be all that we need to do. Still no luck. Maybe we need, I didn't think we would need a rigid body on that. Maybe we do. Maybe one of them has to have one. Let's try. I'm a little surprised that that didn't work. Rigid body 2D. If you're going to do that, make sure you turn gravity off. Otherwise, weird things are going to happen. Okay, that's better. I'm a little surprised that we needed a rigid body though, so I might want to go back and check that. That seems a little strange to me. He didn't go through the car, so I wonder what would happen if he got hit outright. In that case, I ran into the car. What would happen if the car runs into me? Okay, that's what I wanted to see. So it is fine. And that is pretty good. So in the next section, why don't we take care of some of our little details here? We've got some layering issues and things like that that we can take care of. All right, so we've got our frog jumping in the right directions. We've got colliders on everything. We've got our cars moving. We just need to do a little bit of cleanup. We've got an issue right now where our frog tends to disappear behind the road. And to illustrate this, I've sort of moved him so that he's right there on, I guess, what would be the sidewalk. And you can see him just fine in the game window. Let me move this up to make sure you can see it. You can see him in the game window. When we run this, he's going to disappear behind the street. Here's what I want you to do in troubleshooting this. I want you to take a look at where he is in the Z-axis. All right, so remember this is a 2D game. We're not supposed to be having a lot going on in Z. It's at 1.8 and we can see it just fine. When we start the game, oh, it goes to 0. Okay, so it's changing it when we run. So that might be a little confusing. What is our road at? So it's not 0. It's a little bit bigger than 0. And that's why we're having some issues here. So we could fiddle around with this. It's probably most tempting to come back over here and switch this out of 2D space and find our frog and move our frog like way up. Oh, it already is. Look, if we look at it from the side, remember I've got this in isomorphic, so we're not going to have any perspective problems. And the frog is well above the street, except when we run him, it's going to set it to 0, which is going to put him behind the street. So why don't we do this instead of trying to mess with the frog? Let's just move the street. So the street is set to 0.4. Let's move it down so that it's below everything else. And now it's below the grass even. So I'll move it just below the grass, and then just to compensate, I'll move the grass back as well. And I'll go ahead and move the water back too so that they're kind of in the same places. And now we've got everything moved. Now it doesn't matter what happens to the frog. It should be good to go. And you can see that that has fixed our problem. So now we've got our frog. He should still be able to jump. And he still dies when he runs into the car. All right, so that fixes our first problem. The rest of them aren't really problems so much as things that we need to add to the game. So let me take care of this game window so that it's over here out of the way. And we just need to add a few things to our screen. So things like how many lives you have left, what your score is, etc. So these are all just sort of game mechanics that we need to add in. And so let's do that. We have a game controller already. And so to add things onto the screen, we're just going to need to add some UI elements. So I'm going to add a text element to hold our score. So I'll rename this to score display. Apparently I was typing it in Greek. Score display. And let's locate this. It's probably going to be in some odd location. There we go. And it's not going to line up necessarily with your game window, but that's okay. So we're going to put this up in the top corner of the screen, say right there. And then we're going to need one for number of lives. Number of lives. Now I'm going to put two things in here. I'm going to put an image, which is going to contain a picture of the frog. And this is going back to what the original Frogger looked like. If we can find a quick screenshot. Okay, lots of wannabes. Where's the old game? That's kind of like a 3D remake of it. I guess Nintendo did something with it. None of these though are the original game. That's the original game right there. We're pretty close to it. All right, so we had down here we had a picture of the frog and then the number of lives that were left. And there's also a time counter here that we haven't accounted for yet. So that's what I want to do. I want to picture the frog down there like the original game had. Well, it just so happens that I have that already. So I have this tiny frog asset here. I'm just going to drag that into source image here. And there's our tiny frog image. And we're probably going to have to fiddle with him a little bit to get him to look right, but that's okay. And now we need our text that will display the number of lives we have left. So let's add text, and we'll drag it down here by the frog. And we're going to need to change a few things on this. We're going to want the font to be white, and we're going to want it to be in the middle. So let's select not that way, but this way, so it's in the middle. And we're not going to go with Arial. I had this font already picked out, this Gaudi font. So let's add that to make it look a little bit more game-ish rather than like a Word document. And we'll do the same thing up here. I'm actually going to right justify and then put it in the middle, and again make it white and make it Gaudi. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. So now we can see it's down here and up there, and we need to adjust it a little bit, but not too much. So let's take another quick whack at it. I think this was okay. I think this is what we needed changed. So we'll move these two things together and really just put it down towards the bottom, and let's see how that looks. That looks a lot better. Okay, so that's just about what I want. And I hadn't really planned on making a time countdown, but why don't we do that anyway, since I saw it on that image. You really need some sort of time pressure to prevent the frog from just sitting down there at the bottom the whole time. And so a timer is going to be done with a slider, which we will then manipulate. So here's your slider. If you want a countdown timer, I'm going to move it if I can. Oh, I'm in game. Here we go. I'm going to move it down here. And I'm going to take off the handle part. Okay, so now we just have basically something that's going to have this little area filled. It looks like there's another slider there, or a little handle there. That's not it. That's not what that is. That's just the fill for it. So let's change that. In the fill part, we'll make it red or blue. I'll make it, I'm kind of hesitant to make it red because that usually indicates danger. I don't know how good yellow will look, but we'll give it a try. And let's set it up to 100 so you can see what this really is. So minimum value and maximum value, let's have it go from 0 to, I don't know what kind of time limit we're going to use, maybe 60. You get a minute to pull this off. And then we'll just change the value. And you can see what this is as we drag this up and down. That's going to be our meter. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is pick this whole numbers so that it only doesn't do fractions anymore. And it goes from 0 to 60. So that'll be 60 seconds on the clock, and it'll tick down. Let's see how the yellow looks. Not too bad. Maybe purple would be better, since it's complementary with green. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we'll make our countdown timer purple. And we need a label next to it that says time, so we know what that is. And then we'll be pretty much done with the UI. It's up there. Move it down here. We'll make it white. Right justify, and we'll have it say time, and we need it to be Gaudi. All right, let's see what that looks like. Not bad. Okay, so now we just need to make these new things work. So let's go into our game controller. I should still have mine open. Here it is. And so let's add a few variables at the top. Let's make an integer called score. We need a holder for our score display so we can reference it easily. So let's do public text, and it's not going to find it because we don't have it in our using statements, right? So let's fix that. I don't actually need collections, so I'll just go over this one. I'll say using Unity Engine.ui, and now we'll be able to get to our text. I'll call it score display. And then we're going to need public int time remaining. And we'll, I don't know why I typed a comma there, a colon there. Let's set it equal to 60. We don't need to change the time text. We really need to change the time slider value. And I think it's simply called slider. Yeah, I think that's right. And we'll say time display here. And then what else do we need? We have score. Oh, number of lives. Public int lives remaining. We'll set that equal to 3. Public text lives display. Okay. And now down in start, this all works, so we can take out this debug statement. I'm going to say whatever the score display is, I'll say score display dot text equals score, and see if it converts it. I guess it's not going to, so I'll say .toString. Now it should be happy. Okay, it does. And now we'll do number of lives. Actually, we could do this in update just as effectively, because we want it to always change. So let's move this. Let's put it in update, and let's do lives display dot text equals, and I'm gonna put an X in there because that's what the old game had in it. I'll do an X and a space, and then I'll have the number, which is lives remaining, and I've misspelled it. .toString, and this time it does it because I've got that X concatenation there. So it's telling me I don't really need that toString part, but I am going to fix the spelling. I'll go ahead and refactor it. I'll right click, I'll find refactor, I'll change this to lives remaining, and that will change it everywhere. This also works in monodevelop, so it's in both tools. And I just need a semicolon and we're happy. Okay, so that will do those two things, and now we're going to need some sort of countdown timer that will count down the number of seconds that are remaining. And it may have been short-sighted of me to set that thing to whole numbers, but that's okay. We'll see what it does. The easiest way, I'm thinking coroutines, I'm thinking all this stuff. The easiest thing I think to do is just going to be to change this downward in the update method. So let me check something really quick. We'll say Unity 3D time dot delta time, and let's see what unit of measure this is in. The time in seconds it took to complete the last frame, read only. So it is the time in seconds. So this will probably work. We'll just check and see if it's not crazy fast or something like that. So we'll just do time remaining is going to be minus equals time dot delta time. That's how much time is left. And it really isn't liking it because this is an integer, right? So let's go ahead and change this from an integer to a float. And that will make it happier. And that means we have to initialize it with a float. So that will make it even happier still. And now we're not taking an error, but we do need to update our display. And so that's going to be the reference to the slider that we had, which was time display. And I think it's value, yeah, it looks right, equals time remaining. And let's go take that tick off. That forces it to do whole numbers. When I was thinking we were going to tick down whole seconds, then it made sense to turn that on. But now that we're ticking down fractional seconds, since we never actually display the time, it doesn't matter. As long as this is just displaying and ticking down at what looks like, 1 second per second. If it actually does it 60 times a second and knocks off a 60th of that, then I don't really care. All right, and if we get down to 0, something obviously will happen, but not yet. So let's just see if it works. And we're running, and nothing's. Oh, we've got an error, which you can't see. It's off the screen. It says no reference exception. Let me switch to console so you can see it. No reference exception, object reference. Okay, because I didn't set any of my references. That's typical me, right? I always want to click that run button and see the result. All right, so we need to set a few of these things up, right? So let's do our game controller, and it's going to want to know what our score display is. So let's drag score display in, and time display is going to be our slider. And our lives display is presumably going to be one of these guys, right? So let's see. We probably should rename them so that we can find them easily. So let's change this to lives display. And the other one to score display, which I already did, so that's fine. Okay, go back to game controller. And lives display goes in lives display. Slider is slider. We might want to change that so that it says time display. Good. All right, let's see if we have better luck. Okay, and you can see that the amount of time is ticking back at a reasonable rate. And so that's good. And we've got 0 here, and we've got the number of lives times 3. It's a little, I might want to change the size of that. It's getting a little bit washed out. But these are all visual issues, so this is a programming class, so we're pretty much just focused on getting it all working and presumably then passing it off to someone with a better eye for detail. Or doing it yourself, depending on if you've got people helping you. Okay, let's see if I can actually make it through here, because I've actually kind of made it hard. And I felt like I should have made it through there. Let's look at what these. Okay, look at the collider on the SUV. It's gigantic. So we should probably, that's probably why I'm not able to get through there. So let's fix that. Let's go and find our 80s SUV. Let's put one out there so we can adjust its collider so that I don't die every time. Okay, there we go, because I think I just added the collider on and called it a day. So let's adjust it. Here's our collider. Our size needs to come down this way, and it needs to come down a lot this way. And there we go. So it was going by the bounding box, and apparently we probably should have trimmed this a little better in Photoshop, but we've got some extra pixels around the edge. All right, so I want this to apply to the prefab. So having made this adjustment, I now need to come up here and click this apply button. It says prefab, hit apply, and now it applies it to all of them. And now we don't need this anymore, so let's delete it. And this should make the game a little better. I might actually be able to make it across there this time. So close. Okay, I made it that time. Now I still have my forward velocity problem, which we corrected. I just apparently the setting didn't stick. So this we decided is probably something like 0.5. Okay, pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the next challenge. I guess there's one more thing we could do here in this section. How are we on time? So we've been going 20 minutes. We should add some points for each time we successfully move forward without dying. And so that's how you get scores. In the original game, you got a little bit of points as you moved up there. And then we don't have any spots where your final resting place would be, your final destination, your goal is not up there. What the heck is that? Oh, okay. That's my frog. Okay. That's my UI layer. All right. I don't have any of the target positions there at the top. So you would get a lot of points when you reach those. So maybe 100 points for that, and maybe 10 points every time you move forward successfully. Side to side and backwards doesn't count. So let's see if we can make that happen. Let's see in our Froggy controller. If he's not dead, then we can add 10 points. Now, how would we do that? We're going to have to get a reference to the game controller. So let's do that. I like to store it and get it once. So let's do that. Let's do private, and then we'll call it game controller. And I'll call it GC, since you really can't call it game controller. And it's private, so I should make it underscore GC. All right, and then we'll set up here, we'll set GC equal to same thing we usually do, right? We'll get by tag. So we'll say game object for the big G, find game object, singular with tag, and it's going to be called game controller. And we don't actually care about the game controller object, we care about the script. So that's really what we want to reference here. So let's do get component. Game controller, and that will get us a reference to the script. And now it's going to complain, I think, because of the casting. No, it's got the casting down. Okay, so it's happy now. All right, so now we have a reference to the game controller. If we successfully move forward, that's going to be this one. And let's do GC. Now, we didn't set the score. We should have a method in there that sets the score. It's bad practice for objects to be manipulating things on other objects directly. There should be some sort of exposed way to do that. So let's add that very quickly. It's going to be an easy one. We have score, and we initialize it to 0 somewhere. I guess we didn't actually. We'll go ahead and explicitly set it to 0 for its starting value, and then let's add a method in here. So we'll say public void add points, and we'll say how many as our argument. And now we'll just say score plus equals how many. Pretty easy. All right, so that's good. Let's switch back over to Froggy controller. We'll say gc.add points. And how many? I think we decided we would add 10 points for each forward jump. And maybe that might be something you want to expose so that level designers can change it. But you get the idea. So we should now get 10 points for each forward jump. And that's interesting. We're getting a lot of points for each forward jump. Interesting. Okay, so it's jumping forward. Oh, okay. We never fixed our, okay, that's why we, okay, suddenly the light bulb just went on, everybody. You probably figured this out a long time ago, don't you? This is the bad part about doing this on a recording. Obviously I forgot to set this, and that's why we're having all of those weird forward vector time problem things, right? So why don't we do this? My face is red right now. Can't believe I missed that. All right, so that's good. That'll fix our point problem, and we can now take out our hack from earlier. So we shouldn't be having these jump distance problems any longer, but we do still need to add just jump distance. So do jump distance, there we go. And we can take it out here. Okay. Good. Okay, so we should get 10 points. That's better. Nothing for going sideways. Oh, they got me. All right, but it's functioning correctly. This game is actually kind of hard. So here's what I want you guys to do. Did I put this in the right? I didn't. I did it on the British side, didn't I? Okay, let's do this. In the scene, let's move our car spawn point down so that it's on the English side or the American side. And now I want you to see if you can make cars in the other lane go the other direction at preferably a different interval. So that'll be your challenge. And that's where I'll wrap up this video. Good luck.